Now, a woman who was swindled out of £20,000 by a fraudster she met on a dating app wants more to be done to help victims of romance fraud.
Yes, Suzanne Famula thought that Christopher Harris was her perfect match, but he was lying to her and asking for money to cover for things such as fictional medical treatments. He was later jailed for fraud. She joins us in the studio alongside former Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent Babu, who says cases like this are just the tip of the iceberg. Good morning to both of you. Suzanne, I'm so sorry. You know, what an awful thing to go through. Talk us through when you first met him and how this sort of relationship progressed.
So I met him just before Christmas in 2020 online, and my dad was quite poorly at the time, and we just lost a close family friend as well. And we just, like, because it was still in lockdown, we just arranged, like, walking dates and stuff and just getting to know each other. And then it was kind of, like, on and off for a little, like, for a few months. And then in April 21, it was kind of like, we're either doing it or we're not sort of thing. And then it just kind of, like, snowballed from there. Like, he said he was meant to come round to mine for dinner and he didn't turn up, and he said he was in hospital. And then he said he needed to go for private treatment.
So that's when he first asked for some money.
So you sent you photos and all of that?
Yeah, yeah. I had photos of him with, like, hospital wristbands. And
we can see here, this is like one of the photos he sent.
Yeah, and I've had CT machine photos, like blood tests. And he knew exactly the orders.
Right, I would take you through it. I mean, I can see that you're nervous, to say the least, sitting here. And having been a victim of this terrible crime, it just makes sense, to say the very least, because it was after 2 months of dating that he asked for his first amount of money, but it sounded totally plausible. What was it about him that made you feel that he was telling you completely the truth? Were you in love with him?
No, not at that point. Like, I wouldn't say ever. We'd both been through similar traumas. Like, I found out his trauma was a lie. He said he had a twin brother that passed away as a kid. And because I told him my mum had passed away a few years before, it was like that shared experience. Right. And then we had, like, he seemed to have the same sort of morals and, like, outlook on life and the same sort of things that I wanted.
So he makes up a whole story, just to be clear, as con men do. I'm looking at the police officer here. He tells you that he needs medical treatment for extras, and it's a drip, a small amount, then gradually more. Yeah. Stories about having a medical condition, stories about having a twin brother, and you feel complete sympathy for him.
Yeah, he even had stories about having a mortgage. Right. Because that was another one of his things, like household bills. Right. And I think because I just lost someone really close to me and my dad was poorly, I didn't want another person I cared about to, like...
No. So is that why, when he was asking you for sort of bits of money here, bits of money there, and then did it come to a point where you thought, actually, this has added up to a lot of money and I haven't had any of it back? You know, what happened when you then thought about that amount of money? When was the realisation point?
It was another time where he was meant to come over, we were meant to spend the day together, and he cancelled, claiming he was in hospital. And because I knew where he lived, I actually knocked on his front door and spoke to his mum. Right. And I just asked her, like, oh, how was he after his operation? And she's like, didn't know anything about it. And I asked her about, like, the twin brother and stuff like that. And that's when it really hit me. I had an inkling before, and I was trying to, like, play nice to get my money back. And
so she told you then it was all a lie?
Yeah. But he just always gave excuses as to why he couldn't. There was always promise of it, but...
How did that feel, then, when you were suddenly confronted with the truth of what had happened?
It was horrendous. It was literally, like... It was the worst thing I've ever had. Like, it's the shame and the embarrassment of it all.
Well, and that's the thing. Right. I mean, well done to you for speaking about this, for reporting it, because, Dal, let's come to you. I mean, we sort of know, like we're saying, the tip of the iceberg, don't we? Because a lot of times people don't report it because of the embarrassment, because of the shame. They just want to forget about it and move on, I imagine. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Suzanne's been incredibly brave coming out and perhaps helping other men and women who may fall victim of this crime. But essentially, people need to be very sceptical. They need to have a healthy sense of cynicism. And I appreciate that's counterproductive, because when you're going into a relationship, that's not what you want to be thinking about. But, you know, the golden rules are, if somebody starts asking you for money, you need to be asking why. If somebody starts saying that they can't give you the address of where they live in, you need to be asking that. And I think you need to also look at the dating apps need to have more responsibility.
That's what I hope we're going to come on to. We want to talk about, what happens now, and you've done some extraordinary things. But before we do, this was quite an unusual case. I think he was successfully prosecuted for fraud by deception, because there is no offence of romantic fraud, so to speak. It's an aggravating feature. How long did he actually end up getting as a custodial sentence?
29 months.
Right, and knowing that, and that's his punishment, I just wonder, what has that done to you? What's this done to you? How's it left you?
I'm better now. Like, I did go through some dark times with it all. I've had great support from friends and Beacon Victim Support Charity. They've done fantastic with, different things. Yes, he got a good sentence, but I feel like there's more that could be done in regards to that.
So you want there to be a specific crime and you want there to be a register, because he'd done this before, hadn't he?
Yeah, I believe he had done this before, yeah.
So that register, that would, if effectively, there would be a separate crime of romantic fraud. Is that the idea? And then anybody that went on a dating app could check the person out, much like the sex offenders register, you would know whether somebody was a fraud.
So you're obviously aware that we have Sarah's law, Claire's law, where people have either been sex offenders or they've assaulted women or partners in relationships. So you're able to make that request to the police to get that information. I think there's a challenge around how that register would be developed, but certainly the dating apps, the internet, need to ensure that they have additional responsibilities.
Why isn't it a term and condition of joining an app for you to make clear that you have not been prosecuted for fraud by deception?
Well, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I think we should be asking that question, because what you're doing is you're making men and women that go onto dating sites vulnerable, because you take at face value what people are saying.
Of course. And you did eventually get your money back, but not from him, didn't you?
Yeah, I got it back from the bank eventually.
I'm really proud of you for doing that, because although it's a slightly different topic, you really, really fought for that. And you decided not to be a victim and insist that money came back, right?
Yeah.
And so there is hope out there. I just wondered very quickly, and I know it's very hard to summarise it, for people out there that may be experiencing or have experienced what has happened to you, what's your message to them?
Seek out a victim support charity like I did, and just be a thorn. Just keep plugging and keep going, because you can get there. You can get it all back.
Well done to you for speaking out about it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you both as well. Well, if you've been affected by any of the issues we've been discussing, you can find advice at support@itv.com/helplines.